Welcome to Paul's Heart. I'm Paul, author of the book Paul's Heart Life as a Dad and a 35-Year Cancer Survivor, available on Amazon. It's one of the hardest things to know what to do when someone close to us, whether it be a friend or a family member, falls seriously ill, whether it be a serious illness such as cancer, or any other illness, or perhaps suffer from a horrible accident of any kind. And we're obviously scared for them, but we don't necessarily know what we can and should do for them. And of course, being empathetic individuals, we want to visit them, we want to show them that we care, but what do we say without saying the wrong thing? And you can think that, well, what's really the wrong thing? If you really care, you're just telling them, you're trying to give them inspiring words. And unfortunately, there are things that often get said that, as well meaning as they may be to the person saying them, to the person receiving them, end up quite hurtful. As a cancer patient and survivor, I know that I've heard my share. I generally don't correct people when they say something to me because I do know that they mean well with the things they say, but not everybody shares the way that I deal with those kinds of things. Of course, there's always the rule of thumb that, if you're not sure what to say, then don't say anything at all. Try not to force any kind of conversation. Remember, you're still struggling yourself, seeing what they're going through. Yes, they have their own hard time dealing with what they're dealing with, and you don't want to make it worse for them by dealing with what are you worried about added to their plate. They don't need to be worried about what you're thinking. They're the ones actually dealing with that situation. One of the things that probably does bother me the most is the phrase, they lost their battle. They lost their fight. Um, you know, there's no mistaking that, a diagnosis of cancer or MS, ALS, anything like that, they're so difficult to deal with. But it's a diagnosis, it's a disease, it's not a battle, it's not a fight. Those kinds of terms, you know, uh, bring forth images of soldiers, boxers with boxing gloves beating the crap out of each other. That's not how a diagnosis with a serious illness works. And in a battle and in a fight, somebody loses. And unfortunately, not everybody does, overcome their diagnoses with cancer. And it's not because of anything on their own doing, it's circumstances. Circumstances from the type of cancer, the stage of cancer, the way the treatment was tolerated, the physiology of the body, any number of things, none of which are the fault of the patient. So you can see where I'm getting at, that it's unfair to say that a cancer patient lost their battle. They didn't lose anything. They dealt with it as best as they could, the strongest that they could. Simply, if you're going to describe something like that, they passed away. That's the easiest way to say something like that. Not they lost their battle, not they lost their fight. It's not fair to the person who lost their life. Another one, and this is a big one, people really mean well when they don't know what to say. They want to talk about other people they know that have had a similar experience. I know someone who had cancer. And then they finish it off. Unfortunately, they passed away. That's not something a cancer patient wants to hear. You know, if you're going to try and share any kind of cancer story, you know, of course, make sure that there is some inspiration behind it. But understand that there is such a difference in cancers and the diagnoses. So there are always going to be different results and, you know, different lengths of time to deal with those diagnoses. So comparing other individuals with cancers, not necessarily a good thing unless there's a success story behind it. I constantly will try to encourage those diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm out 37 years. That should be inspirational to people. And I'm just going to leave it at that because that's what I'm trying to convey. One that gets me as a cancer survivor out this far. And then this one actually does bother me, but I can't blame the people who say it to me. You look good. I don't feel good. I have several late developing side effects that I have to deal with, some of which cause pain and discomfort. Others are causing other issues that will have to be dealt with, whether treatment, surgery, whatever. You know, it's not like the Saturday Night Live character with Billy Crystal doing, I think it was Fernando Lamas. You look marvelous. You know, it's better to look good than to feel good. No, I'd rather feel good instead of look good. You know, the shell that I put out for people, it's so that you don't feel uncomfortable when you see me in public. That way I don't have to explain anything. That way you don't have to walk away feeling bad. But again, if you want to avoid that, instead of saying you look good, just ask, hey, how you doing? But be prepared because I might say I'm okay, or I might be having a bad day that day. And you're going to get the truth from me either way, but just be prepared. And then most importantly, don't bail. Stick around. When someone close to you, whether it's friend or family member, you know, falls upon a diagnosis, has an accident, whatever, cancer's not contagious. That's a myth that existed back in the 50s and 60s. You know, the fear of shaking someone's hand and catching cancer. You can't catch cancer. It's not contagious. But abandoning somebody who you normally would see otherwise is sometimes just as bad as the side effects that person deals with cancer treatments. That abandonment, that feeling of aloneness, giving that cancer patient time to think, you know, whereas a visit with a friend could be a welcome distraction. It's not pleasant. Somebody who has to go through those treatments, somebody who has to heal from severe injuries. Your presence makes all the difference to them. And I can tell you, you don't forget who does disappear on you. Because when you're around years later and you reflect on stuff, you can see who was there for you and who wasn't. Tough video for me to do. I've got some thoughts on my mind right now that are coming to the front after all this time. I've got a major event coming up next week, and I hope you join me. But these were just some of the thoughts on my mind right now. What to say, what not to say. Until next time, this is Paul's Heart.